I just wanted to strike while the iron was hot with this one. My son has kicked me out of my normal recording position, so I'm going to try using my phone for a change. And I want to talk about the finale of season 2 of Picard. And for obvious reasons, if you haven't seen it, please run away now. Due warning has now been given. So, the Borg are troubling me. In particular on this. I know there are many other things to be troubled by, but the Borg are really troubling me with this one. I came up with this really neat sheet of time travel antics here. Not that you'll be able to read this necessarily on the medium in which I'm using it, but I just try to get things straight in my head. So let me explain this to you in case that wasn't very clear, because it probably wasn't on this camera. But we start off in a standard future where the events of 2024 have happened as they should have done. We've gone on to the next generation, and we've ended up in the Picard future. Q then messes with that and does the snap, and he snaps us into a second future, which I've labelled very imaginatively Future 2. And Future 2 is the result of 2024 being modified. And having identified that, Picard et al. Then sun slingshot back to normal 2024 before the event that happens to modify the future that they found themselves in, which is like a mirror universe future, but isn't, because it's just a modified version of their normal timeline. With me so far? Okay. Obviously, they take the remnants of a Borg Queen back with them. Very great idea on their part. And she then takes over, or Gerardis is taken over by her a little bit. And ultimately, they seemingly do enough to restore their own timeline. But what does happen, obviously, is that they leave Rios back in 2024. But they send Gerardis off as a modified version of the Borg Queen in the La Sirena, going towards the Delta Quadrant, okay, in 2024. So Q then does another snap, and he puts them back into what seems to be their original future, so my future 1, that they left from when the Stargazer was about to self-destruct. Now, my question is, well, there are several questions. Were the Borg in the Delta Quadrant in 2024? If they were, is there, in fact, a traditional Borg Queen there in the Delta Quadrant? And would she therefore not object to another Borg Queen rocking up and saying, actually, I'd like to do it this way now? So, if that is the case, if those two things are the case, what happened with those two Borg factions? Did Gerardis take over after Voyager Endgame? You see, I went and looked at some of the clips on YouTube of the first episode of season 2 of Picard, and her unfolding Borg ship comes out of a spatial anomaly. Now, the question is why? Bigger question is how, and I'll come to that. But could it have been the case that her version of the Borg have actually been running parallel to the Borg that we know of? Because it occurs to me that Picard and crew arrived back in their future with their memories and modifications like Seven's new implants intact. If that's the case, then obviously they are living the original timeline as it happened to them. No one on the Stargazer bridge objected to Picard being there and issuing commands, which suggests to me that that future is identical to the one which they left. But what I'm thinking is, if Gerardis Borg did take over and were in some way dominant, then best of both worlds never happened. And maybe the Borg that Q originally sent them back to meet never happened, which means that Voyager never happened, or it didn't happen in many respects that we know about, which means that Seven wouldn't have been discovered because she might never have been assimilated by the Borg in the first place. Are you following? So my thinking then, therefore, is that Gerardis would have known this, and she would have known that from the Borg Queen as well. So maybe that vessel that she turns up in is their collective. So maybe she has a subset of the Borg that she controls, and they have actually managed to steer clear of the traditional Borg, who still originated from 2024, and who then produced a queen, who in the alternate timeline was the queen that the Confederation kind of guys, had beaten up and, effectively disemboweled, and led to her going back to then come forward again with Gerardis to form this different style of Borg. But I'm not sure that that's really been cleared up. I think that's still a sort of a potential plot hole. Well, not plot hole, but it's a plot divergence. And I don't think we've really had a clear idea of that. Now, maybe I've missed something, or maybe people would agree that Gerardis kept out of the way until what she perceived to be the right time to come back in to actually trigger the events. Now, this is my other issue with this, okay? If Gerardis coming back with the Borg caused Q to initiate the time jump, then how could she have appeared on the bridge of the Stargazer already Gerardis? Because they hadn't gone back at that point. So is this a predefined temporal loop where everything that's happened has always happened? Because Guinan says that she's always had a picture of Rios in the bar wherever she's been, which implies that Rios always stayed in the past. And Guinan isn't sort of calling that out as being odd. That's kind of what's always happened. So that implies that the time loop that Q starts has always happened, if I'm reading that right. Maybe I need to watch the entire series again, I'm not sure. But that seems to be what she's saying. It's one of these almost like a predestination thing, so that Gerardis came back to set in motion the events that would lead to Q during the time jump, because she's already done that, and that time jump always has happened. That's kind of a weird one, because Picard implies that she's had 400 years to come up through the time stream to be in the position where she is now, which means that she hasn't time jumped into that point. She's just come up the time stream naturally. So it's all kind of, I'm just kind of struggling with how that melds with the original Borg timeline, because the Borg have been critical in setting up who Picard is now and how the Federation has developed, because there'd be no Defiant. Lots of things that have come off the back of the original Wolf 359 disaster with the Borg. So it's really sort of interesting that they've messed seemingly and made a sort of this offshoot Borg, and yet we haven't actually seen them in this sort of the established Next Generation timeline up until this point, seemingly. And now, of course, we've got them next to this transwarp conduit, and maybe next season we'll see Picard and apparently the original cast maybe they'll go and explore whatever lies beyond that conduit. And that, to me, that this would make the perfect point in which a new Enterprise arrives. We haven't seen an Enterprise yet, but if they were to bring in a new Enterprise at this point, then they could use that for season 3. So it's all really interesting. It's I found myself quite liking the final episode in spite of myself. I think there's been a lot of negativity around this season because, this is not standard format Trek. It feels like an extended away mission spread over an entire season, which is kind of odd. I didn't like the fact that they decided they were going to use the green lasers on the night sights for, I don't know if that's a standard night sight colour, but to my mind that was like, let's assimilate these special forces guys and we'll stick green sights on them to make green laser sights on their guns to make them look more Borgy. Really? Is that a thing? I don't know. Mixed messages. it's also interesting in the sense that if this was all predestined, then why didn't Q know how it was going to play out? Did he go to this much effort just to put Picard through one of his lessons? And yet he's also told his son in the past not to provoke the Borg. So why then did he do it knowing that Gerardis would end up being a different type of Borg? Is the formation of this transport conduit part of the reason why the Q have lost their powers, seemingly? I think it could be an offshoot of that. Now, let me just... Okay. So Gerardis needs lots of starships to combine their shields to contain this galaxy-threatening anomaly thing of the week. Okay. Why, if it's going to wipe out an entire sector, does it only shoot a beam in one direction straight at the Borg ship? Why is that a thing? How does that work? Sorry, dogs barking in the background. Apologies. Why is it that they're in the right place at the right time and this thing's a unidirectional beam that they can block and absorb, and yet it's going to wipe out a huge chunk of this galaxy, apparently? That makes no sense to me. And why? How does she know that it's going to happen just then, just at that moment? Why does my dog know to bark at just this point in time to really honk me off? I don't know. Mysteries of the universe and all that. So it's kind of... It just seems a little bit, obviously, inevitably contrived, I guess, because it may well be that this then becomes a thing in season 3, of course, which we know they've filmed already, and it's going to presumably fall on directly from the events we've just witnessed. I did quite like the final episode, despite myself. I was fully prepared to be massively disappointed. I knew Gerardis was going to be the Borg Queen. That was going to be blatantly obvious right from the get-go. Past a certain point, we knew that was who was on the bridge of the Stargazer from episode 1. I think that's pretty much obvious. When Wesley turned up again, I thought, oh, come on, guys, really? And because I'm horribly behind on these things, I've only just recently completed watching The Big Bang Theory, so I fully expected Sheldon and Coates to go past in the background. I thought even for them that probably would have been a bit much, but I think that would have been quite entertaining if I'd caught one of them going past in the background in the park or something. That would have been quite entertaining. But quite why Sung's offspring would be sufficiently gifted for Wesley to bother with her, unless it was a simple act that she'd acted in such a way to preserve the Khan timeline clearly already. I guess that's why he decided that she had that sort of potential and she wouldn't otherwise have had anything other than a normal life, as he said to her. So it's interesting that we've now had that linkage between his fate and original series sort of supervisors and so on. So that's interesting. So it's a brave move on their part. And obviously, it does bring another original Next Gen cast member back into the fold as well, which is nice. But I'm just puzzled by this whole Borg thing. So I'd be really interested to hear your comments on this. As I say, I don't generally do current Trek commentaries because lots of other people do anyway. I don't have access to the latest discovery in Strange New Worlds at this point. Perhaps I'll get that at some point. It just means another subscription, which at this point in time is money that I don't necessarily want to be spending, but I might, knowing me. If you're interested in anything, my thoughts on Discovery and the like, insofar as I've seen it, obviously I'll do another video on that. So just let me know, and I'll try and put that together. But because this is so current, I just thought that I would have a crack at it, thinking about it and trying to see if I could figure it out. Because now in my mind, I don't know whether all of the Next Generation, DS9 and Voyager has actually happened as we saw it, whether or not that is technically canon, or whether or not we've just retconned it because the Borg aren't quite the Borg that we remember them being now. Maybe that wasn't the intention. I think that probably the intention was that Gerardis is in control of a sort of splinter collective, a little bit like Lore was, I guess. in that he had his own group of Borg that was separate from the main collective that he was in charge of. So maybe she's done that. But I would have thought that the standard issue queen, unless she could have been persuaded, would have been dead set against that, and she would have gone after them with a view to assimilating them like she'd assimilate any other source of assimilation material. So I don't know. Let's discuss in the comments. I would be really interested to hear what people's thoughts are on this one. Obviously I will just keep on doing my Babylon 5 videos in the meantime. As a sort of a finite thing which I can control, but I just don't have the access to the current Trek stuff to try and do anything current on that. But I do follow Trek Yards and the like, who do obviously discuss these episodes from time to time. So yeah, but as I said, interested in your comments. Do like and subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And I'll see you on my normal, regularly scheduled sort of videos. Cheers for now.